Hi, and welcome to this short tutorial on creating and editing themes in the Adaptive Wallpaper Changer app. This is a slightly more advanced tutorial than the others, as it touches on some of the stuff going on behind the scenes, so it's meant more for experienced users. Those with a programming background or experience with other forms of logic might feel right at home here. To access it, go to the main screen and tap on the following icon up in the top right corner. From there, tap on the New button down the bottom, or select an existing theme and tap on the Edit button. Let's start by choosing a fairly simple theme, day or night, and tapping Edit. Here we can see a few basic details, such as the theme icon that will appear on the theme list of the previous screen. You can choose from either a pre-existing icon or import your own image to use. The theme title and description can also be edited. So let's take a look at what is making this theme tick. Under Day List, we can see that this list will be selected by the app if the hour of the day is 7 AM or later. This is on the first line, but notice that there is a condition attached. On the second line, an AND operator is being used. What this means is that the first line and the second line, they both need to be true in order for this day wallpaper list to be chosen. So in this case, it means that the hour has to be both 7 AM or later and earlier than 1900 or 7 PM at night. If neither of these conditions are met, then the app will skip this list and move on to the next one down. So let's give a few real-life examples. If the time was 5 AM, well, this isn't 7 AM or later, so straight away the day list is skipped and the app will move on to checking the night list. How about 9 PM? This is later than 7 AM, so the first condition is met. However, it isn't earlier than 7 PM, so the second condition isn't met, and again this list is skipped and it will go on to the next. Okay, now say it was 3 in the afternoon. That's later than 7 AM and earlier than 7 PM. Both conditions are met, and so the app will now choose a wallpaper from the day list. None of the lists coming up after that are even looked at. We've got our target. Now let's move on to the night list. As you can see, it's quite similar, but covering all of the hours outside of the day list. What's different though is the second line has an OR operator instead of an AND. This means that only one of the conditions on the two lines has to be correct for the night list to be selected. When you think about it, this makes sense, because in a 24-hour format, 9 PM or 2100 is later than 1900, but it can't also be earlier than the 7 AM on the second line. When the time hits 24, it resets back to 0, so both conditions will never ever be true. Okay, let's try a bit of editing. So, say we wanted to change the day list time from 7 AM to 9 AM. What do we do? The most obvious thing to do would be to increase the 7 to a 9. However, that would leave the times between 7 and 9 in limbo, because the night list will only change wallpapers before 7. Between these times, no wallpapers would ever get changed. So, to fix this, we also need to edit the time on the night list to 9 o'clock too. Okay, now might be a good time to go into the other operators you can use. Let's cancel these changes and reload. We have covered and or, but there are also nor, plus, and not. Nor is the opposite of or, and basically means that neither the first line nor the second line of these conditions are true. So if applied to the day list, if the and was changed to nor, it would choose this list if the hour wasn't 7 AM or later, nor 7 PM or earlier. In other words, in this particular case, these conditions will never be met, because it is impossible to be earlier than 7 AM and later than 7 PM simultaneously. The next operator, and not, is the opposite of and. It basically means use this list only if both conditions are not true. So if either one passes, then the wallpaper list will be skipped. Okay, let's discuss what a few of the buttons do, starting with the trash icon that you can see on the far right on each line of conditions. As you can probably guess, tapping on this icon deletes a line from the list, removing those conditions. Next, let's look at the three buttons you can see on the right of each category. The red X is probably also fairly obvious. Pressing it deletes the entire category. So for example, tapping it here will remove the entire day list. A confirmation dialog will be displayed. As you can see, it will warn you if you have any wallpapers added to this category. We'll come back to the next one, the orange plus, in a second. Notice that when you tap on the blue plus, a new line is added. This allows you to add a new set of conditions. Also, notice that the operator on the left is also an OR, like the second line down, only this one can't be changed. This means that any one of those three conditions will have to be met in order to change to a wallpaper from the night list. If the second line OR is changed to an AND, notice the one on the third line also changes. This means every single one of the three conditions would have to be true. It isn't possible to mix and match, so you couldn't, for example, have an AND followed by an OR. This is where that orange plus button in the middle comes in handy. However, it starts to get a bit more complex, so don't worry if this is hard to follow. In fact, it's quite okay to skip this next part if you like, because you will only have to use these options on very rare occasions. But they're there if you need them. Tap it and you will see a new window pop up, asking for what operator to use for each group of the list. Ignore this for now and just tap on OK. What this does is create a new group of conditions. Where you were stuck with an AND operator before, you can now choose a different one for all conditions in this group. This is the first group of conditions, and this is the second group. So what the pop-up a second ago was asking is the relationship between these groups. Similar to what we learnt earlier, if set to AND, this means that the conditions from group 1 will have to be met along with those from group 2. If set to OR, then the conditions from either group will need to be met. Like I said before, don't worry if this doesn't make too much sense to you. It's only used very rarely. When you have the time, take a look at a few other themes. Practice playing around and editing a few to see how they work. Okay, we'll now move on to creating our own theme and taking a look at the huge list of parameters available to us. Go back to the theme menu and tap on the New button. As you can see, the screen is identical. First, let's start by giving the theme an icon. Tap on Choose Icon and scroll down to clock 1. Or, if you're feeling particularly adventurous, go all out and tap on clock 2. Notice, by the way, that you can change the colour up the top. Give it a basic name and description. Okay, good. Now let's proceed to the wallpaper lists. This time, let's change the name of the list to give it a bit more meaning. Tap on the pencil icon next to its name. Let's call it Active Screen List. Highly original, I know. Currently, it is set to always activate this wallpaper list. Let's have a look at a few of the parameters we can choose from instead. As you can see, there are quite a few. Every single one of the inbuilt themes uses at least one of these parameters to set the conditions for when wallpaper lists should be changed. For example, the weather theme uses the weather type parameter, whereas the charge status theme uses the battery level parameter. Try playing around with a few after this tutorial and find some that suits your needs. Note, you can use the View Log button in the notification area to see the different values at any time, so you know what to set them to. Okay, for this theme, let's change it so this list is only activated when the screen has been on for a while. Tap on Always and then scroll down and change this to Screen on Time. Then tap Is and change it to Is or Is Later Than, and then change the value to 60. This now means that the list will only be chosen if the screen has been on for a minute or longer. Good so far, but what about the wallpaper list when the screen has just been turned on? To achieve this, we're going to need a new list. So, tap on the blue button above, labelled New List. This will add a new list to the top, but that's not where we want it. If we left it here, because it is the first list to be checked, and it is set to always succeed, our first list below won't ever be reached. So here is something we can do to reorder the lists. Tap and hold on an empty space in our first list. You will see that you can drag it with your finger. Now drag it to the position where the top list is and let go. Notice that now it has moved into the top position. Just an FYI, you can actually do this with lines of conditions too. You can even move them to other lists if you want. Okay, you might be thinking that we should change the condition now on our new list because it's set to always fire. Maybe we can set it to only activate when the screen on time is lower than 60. However, we don't need to in this case. We're only going to use one wallpaper list for the screen on for a minute or longer and another list if it's been on for less. This means that if the app checks the conditions of the first list and determines they are not met and reaches the second, we want a wallpaper shown regardless. We could have actually done the same thing for the day or night theme we covered earlier, and just set the second list conditions to always, if we had wanted. Okay, before we save our work, let's again rename the second list to something a bit more meaningful. I hope you came up with a much better name than mine. Now, if we tap on OK, we should see our brand new theme in the theme list along with the others. We can now use it and go back to the main screen. Try adding a wallpaper to each list and see if your creation works. Oh, and when testing, make sure you keep the screen from turning off, or it might not actually last a full minute to be able to change the wallpaper. Okay, that about covers adding and editing themes. If you've come this far and understood everything, you've done well. If not, probably the best thing to do is experiment for yourself, editing existing themes and creating new ones until you start to grasp the concepts. Thanks for listening. If you have any questions, please ask in the comments section below. See you next time.